Welcome everyone to today's Explainer. I am so incredibly excited to walk you through this one because we're looking at something deeply fascinating and honestly surprisingly relevant to everyday life. Today we're building a practical guide, like a literal toolkit to help you spot the red flags of manipulative behavior and gradual control, all using real psychological source material. Our goal here isn't to look at this from some detached academic distance. We want to understand the actual mechanics of how control is systematically built, piece by piece, right in plain sight, so you can recognize it the second it happens.
Okay, let's dive right into this with a quote that completely shatters the biggest myth we carry around. Forensic psychologist Dr. Kelly Watkins puts it so bluntly, "You're not too smart to join a cult." You know, we love to think of ourselves as completely immune to manipulation. We think we'd see the warning signs from a mile away. But the reality, at least according to the psychological research, is that most people who end up in these highly manipulative groups are totally ordinary, highly intelligent people. It's actually that powerful illusion of immunity that makes us even more vulnerable.
Here is our roadmap for the explainer. We'll be hitting 1. The myth of immunity. 2. The initial manipulative hook. 3. Tactics of gradual control. 4. The breakdown of identity. 5. The extreme consequences. And finally, 6. Awareness is your shield. Let's get right to it.
Section 1. The myth of immunity. Why anyone can fall victim.
To truly wrap our heads around manipulative control, we literally have to throw away our preconceived notions of who gets targeted. We always picture weak or gullible individuals, right? But psychology tells a remarkably different story. Before we go any further, though, let's make sure we have a shared baseline. This is the definition of a cult straight from the APA Dictionary of Psychology. It basically describes a group with unusual or atypical beliefs, absolute seclusion from the outside world, and a strict authoritarian structure. They're highly cohesive, fiercely organized, super secretive, and ultimately pretty hostile to non-members. Oh, and they are almost always led by a charismatic individual whose authority goes entirely unquestioned. So, with that objective foundation out of the way, how do these groups actually find their members?
Well, they target universal human needs. As Dr. Watkins points out, recruiters don't prey on a lack of intelligence. They prey on the simple fact that we are all human. Just look at this list. A desire for belonging, a search for meaning, a need for certainty, and comfort in an unstable world. We are pack animals by nature. If you're in a vulnerable transition, say a bad breakup, moving to a brand new city, losing a job, or just going through a period of deep loneliness, realize that this is exactly when your psychological defenses are at their lowest. That's when recruiters strike. They've essentially built a system to offer these perfectly packaged, simple answers to incredibly complex human problems.
Moving on to Section 2, the initial manipulative hook, first contact and the lure. So the crucial point here is this. They absolutely do not feel dangerous at first. Think about it. If they did, no one would ever join. The very first red flag isn't some sinister, creepy request. It's usually an incredibly innocent invitation. These recruiters operate in perfectly normal, everyday spaces. We're talking social media, local community clubs, neighborhood dinners, even corporate self-improvement seminars. They don't walk up to you and ask, "Hey, want to join a cult and ruin your life?" No way. They ask if you want connection, they ask if you want purpose. They extend this non-threatening invitation to hang out with a group of friends who just seem to have it all figured out.
And when you finally show up, bam, they hit you with this, love bombing. This is absolutely critical. It's the very first tool in their psychological arsenal. The moment a potential recruit enters the room, still totally oblivious to the real agenda, they are showered with overwhelming love, attention, and validation. Suddenly, you feel like the most important person in the world. It makes you feel incredibly secure, and you desperately want to go back for more. Listen, if a totally unfamiliar group makes you feel like the center of the universe on day one, that isn't just a lucky coincidence. That is a highly calculated tactic. It's a manufactured, intoxicating high designed specifically to hook someone who is just looking for a place to belong.
Section 3. Tactics of gradual control. How the trap closes.
Notice the massive jump from the left side of this slide to the right. On the left, we've got the initial ask. Hey, come to a community dinner, find some connection. It's incredibly low stakes. But over on the right is the eventual demand. Surrender your belongings, cut off your family, and give us your unquestioned loyalty. A person would never jump from A to Z in a single afternoon, right? The secret weapon of these manipulative groups is gradual commitment. It's like the boiling frog analogy. They ask for a tiny bit more of your time, then a tiny bit more of your money, slowly raising the temperature day by day until you don't even realize the water's boiling.
And this brilliantly illustrates the step-by-step progression of that coercive control. We start right at step 1 with love bombing.
building up that false trust we just talked about. Then, step 2 is isolation, slowly cutting you off from the outside world. Step 3 brings in reward and punishment, where your behavior starts getting heavily policed by the group. And finally, step 4 is de-individuation, where your core self is effectively erased. Let's unpack exactly how they execute those middle steps to lock you in.
The mechanisms of isolation and control are just so insidious. As your time commitment gradually increases, you naturally have way less time for your old friends and family. Actually, if a new group starts demanding all your free time and subtly discouraging your old relationships, that is a glaring red flag. You're being cut off from outside perspectives, the exact people who might point out those red flags. Inside the bubble, you get intense positive reinforcement when you comply. But on the flip side, if you question the leader or step out of line, you face this deep, paralyzing fear of group rejection. Remember what we said earlier? Humans are absolutely terrified of being cast out of the pack. The group weaponizes that primal fear to enforce absolute loyalty.
Section 4, the breakdown of identity, erasing the self.
So the clinical term for this final phase is de-individuation. Over time, your personal identity gets completely swallowed up and replaced by the group's identity. You literally stop thinking as an individual and start thinking entirely as a collective. Your capacity for critical thought, your normal ability to weigh the pros and cons of a situation, is systematically dismantled. It's completely replaced by groupthink. It becomes a hive mind where questioning the leader isn't just frowned upon. For the indoctrinated member, it literally becomes unthinkable.
Let's move to Section 5, the extreme consequences, when theory becomes reality.
When we look back at history, we see exactly what happens when fully indoctrinated members are stripped of their individuality. They engage in behaviors they never, ever would have considered in their normal lives. Look at the Manson family, run by Charles Manson. He directed members to commit brutal murders just to try and spark a race war. Then there's the Sullivanians, who operated right out in the open on Manhattan's Upper West Side, evolving into a coercive sex cult that lasted for decades. The People's Temple, under Jim Jones, is a truly horrific one. Over 900 people died at Jonestown through forced and coerced poisoning. And Heaven's Gate, led by Marshall Applewhite, where 39 members willingly took their own lives, genuinely believing a spaceship behind a comet was going to take them to a higher existence. Guys, these aren't just scary true crime stories. They are the ultimate devastating real-world results of total psychological control.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, Awareness is your shield, breaking the cycle.
First off, we really have to understand why people stay. The biggest myth out there is the question, well, why don't they just leave? As Dr. Watkins explains, it is nowhere near that simple. Being in a group like this functions biologically like a psychological addiction. The group creates a powerful dopamine loop in the brain, a severe pleasure and pain imbalance. The emotional relief, the comfort, the pure escapism the group provides creates a very real chemical dependency. And on top of that, leaving means losing absolutely everything. You lose your entire friend group, your life's purpose, maybe your housing, and your very sense of identity. For someone trapped inside, the pain of leaving literally feels far worse than the pain of staying.
So here is the single most important takeaway to put in your practical toolkit today. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the real protection against manipulative control isn't your IQ. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It is your awareness. It's your ability to spot the love bombing early on, to identify those isolation tactics as they happen, and to recognize when someone is strictly policing your thoughts. Spotting the tools of manipulation before they are fully applied is literally the only true shield you have.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder today. If a group walked up to you tomorrow and offered you the absolute perfect sense of belonging you've always craved, but subtly asked you to trade in your autonomy to get it, would you recognize the trap? Keep this knowledge with you, stay hyper-aware of the tactics we discussed today, and always keep questioning the world around you. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you next time.